Amazing. I think all of those lessons, they're a great segue into what we'll be talking about next. Just thinking about being curious and always asking questions. Our next panel is on non-obvious lessons for fundraising. But as usual, if you are signed up for this panel, for this roundtable, then please make your way to the right of the room. We will be starting it shortly. And if I could just ask everyone else to stay seated. I will now invite Eddy, who is the co-founder and CEO at Goat, to come and speak to us about this topic, and as well as Sam, who is a partner at Fenwick West and will be moderating this panel.
Where do you want us?
Wherever you would like to sit, honestly. How about both of you?
Sure.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for having us here. The topic of today's chat is going to be on fundraising and some of the pitfalls and lessons that entrepreneurs can learn. Next to me, a man who needs no introduction, Eddy Lu, who's the CEO and co-founder of Goat. And I'll let Eddy explain a little bit about what Goat's all about for those of you who don't know. My name's Sam Angus. I'm a partner in the corporate group at Fenwick West. I've been practicing for over 25 years. I work with startups and venture-backed companies, investors, etc. And I happen to work with Goat for many, many years, much to my pleasure. Eddy, why don't you maybe provide a little background on yourself?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, great to be here. I haven't been back to Cal in 12, 13 years, so it was great to walk around right before the session. But yeah, my name's Eddy Lu, co-founder and CEO at Goat. We are a sneaker marketplace. We started in 2015 based on trust and safety. Now we're 1,500 employees, many billions in GMV. What else? We have four brands.
Is that billions with a B?
Billions with a B. 4 brands now. I mean, Goat, we're actually called Goat Group now because we have Goat, Flight Club, Alias, and Grailed, 50 million members. So it's been a fun journey these past 8 years.
Excellent. When you say a fun journey, it's been quite the journey. I understand that when the company that is now Goat started, it was not originally a sneaker marketplace. Why don't you tell people a little bit about the early days and the background, how you got started?
Yeah, I mean, we met Sam back in the early days because we were building a different kind of marketplace. It was called Grub with Us. It was a group dining platform where we brought people together in different cities around the world to go eat with other people at restaurants, like a Berkeley restaurant. And you would just, let's say it was a startup meal, you would go buy a ticket to eat with other people, right? It was a great idea in theory. I actually met Sam because when we were starting that startup, it's like similar vibes to Airbnb. I emailed Brian Chesky at Airbnb and I was like, who should we use as a marketplace lawyer? And I still remember Brian was like, I trust no one but Sam. So here we are today. But yeah, it's been wild. I mean, in theory, I think for a marketplace to be super successful, you have to reduce all friction points in the marketplace. So when we started that group dining marketplace, the problem was that there were so many points of friction to joining a meal. Imagine if the restaurant's too far, the meal's too expensive, the people that joined already you don't like, it's all guys, it's all girls, I'm gluten-free, I'm vegan, I'm scared of meeting other people, whatever it is. Like, it was a great idea in theory. We actually raised $7 million for this idea. It's just there was so much friction to that kind of marketplace that we were just like, we threw everything we had at it and it didn't work, so we decided to pivot. And we pivoted a few times. It wasn't just like once or twice. We pivoted a few times until I would say, so we started that company in 2011. We did Y Combinator. In 2014, we decided to pivot. Like I said, we pivoted a few times. That was, so my co-founder, Daishin, he's been a lifelong sneaker enthusiast. he got his first pair of Jordans. Nice shoes, Sam, by the way. He got his first pair of Jordans when he was 10 years old. He loved playing basketball as he got good grades, so his dad bought him his first pair, the Jordan 5 grape colorway. And for those of you who are into sneakers, you might know that Nike re-releases where they retro sneakers over time. And 23 years later, after that first release, they retroed that shoe that he got, his first pair of Jordans from his dad. So he went on the largest sneaker marketplace at the time, which is eBay, to go buy this pair of sneakers. And he got them, and they turned out to be fake. And he was so bummed. He came to the office, he was like talking to me about this whole story, and we were just like, how come this day and age we're spending hundreds of dollars online and we still have to worry if something's real or fake? So then we were just like, hey, we're pivoting anyway, we still have a little bit of money left, why don't we create a sneaker marketplace and authenticate everything? That was just the basis of it. And we were like, okay, let's just try it. What do we have to lose?
It's a remarkable story because I work with a lot of companies, and pivoting into an adjacent business is not uncommon. In fact, it's one of the hallmarks of successful companies is they're able to navigate their market and their product to respond to the customer's needs. But this was at a whole new level, right? I mean, you're moving from a marketplace of dining and social networking to a sneaker marketplace, which is remarkable. Tell us about the conversations with your investors. Did you ever think about giving the money back when you realized that Grub with Us was not getting traction? What was that like?
So like I mentioned, we raised $7 million for this previous idea, and we had iterated a few times on different ideas, and we raised money from the whole cast of like brand name blue chip investors, right? We're talking about First Round Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, SB Angel, Upfront Ventures, the list goes on. And it wasn't fun, obviously, telling them constantly that we're pivoting. And so here's one fallacy, I think, unfortunately, some of us in the room will have to pivot your companies if you're founders at a given time. When we pivoted Grub with Us, the first thing that we thought of was, hey, we have all this IP around restaurant data, around people preferences. Let's build something adjacent to Grub with Us because we had this data. None of us were passionate about building this anymore because we were so burnt out from what we were doing, but we were just like, to save face, to like kind of do what we're doing, let's create another project around this. And we did it, and we launched, it lasted like 3 months, and we're like, let's just shut it down. And it was a huge waste of time because none of us wanted to do it. If you told me, hey, you could start all over again, what would you build? It wouldn't have been that. It was like a Yelp competitor. It wouldn't have been that product. So that was the first thing we did. And then as we pivoted, we kind of did semi-tangential things until this sneaker pivot happened. And so we had probably $1 million left of the 7 million. And I asked all our kind of major investors if they wanted their money back, right? Just like, hey, we're pivoting from a food thing to a sneaker thing. Like, if you want your money back, let us know now. Otherwise, this is where we're going. And I still have some of the emails to this day. But for example, First Round Capital, they were just like, hey, we're going to get pennies on the dollar back if you give us our money back anyway. Like, the money's worth way more to you than it is to us. Just keep the money. Good luck. Right, and I know this for a fact because I talked to like Upfront, which was our major investor. They like wrote us off to a 0 because they were just like, okay, these guys, they're done, right? They're gonna keep going, but they're done. And good for them that they all kept their money, and not one single person took their money back. And I think we're all happy for it.
Oh yeah, I think they're very happy for it. You mentioned that you started in Y Combinator, and there's a lot of startups that get started in accelerators and incubators, and it's actually a pretty robust market for those types of platforms. Was that helpful for you? If you were starting a new company, would you do that? What was your advice for companies that are thinking about going into an accelerator?
I mean, I think YC is great. Like, it was a much different program when we did it. There was 40 companies in the batch. I think there's like hundreds now. But as first-time founders, I would do it. I wouldn't do it over again, but as a first-time founder, I definitely would, because I went to Berkeley, I majored in computer science. I was a above average developer, right? Like, I wasn't the CS61s were easy to me, but once I got to the higher levels, I knew I couldn't compete against some of these guys, like in AI or algorithms or whatever. And when I got to YC, like, all these people were like tech geniuses. One was the co-creator of Python. There was like others that contributed meaningfully to open source codes. I was just like, what are we doing? But you go to YC because you surround yourself with these brilliant people, and you just, my co-founder and I, we knew we weren't the smartest guys in the room, but we knew we could work the hardest. And the forcing function of YC is that it's only 3 months, and you got to work your ass off for those 3 months, because every Tuesday there's a dinner when everyone comes together, talks about what happened, what they did, and it was a huge forcing function. We would, YC is based in Mountain View, and we there was one Safeway that was open 24 hours a day. We would just go to Safeway at the Starbucks cafe there and just code all night long, because we were just like, let's really use this 3 months as a forcing function. I've probably never worked harder in my life except for that 3 months, and I think that's the benefit of YC, because it just like pushes you, because you're up against all these other people that are trying just as hard to make their startup work. So.
And it's also sort of a vector point for introducing you to investors. When you're young, you probably don't have a lot of contacts among investors. They conjugate around these successful incubators and accelerators. In your first fundraise, so you mentioned you raised $7 million. I don't know if you raised that all, and I don't recall whether you raised that all in your first
We didn't.
go.
It was our seed and then our A.
Okay. In your seed round, okay, you got this idea. How far along was the product? How far along was the pitch? What was the pitch to investors at that time? And this was Grub with us, right?
Yeah.
And what was the reaction you got from investors?
So another thing about YC, which good point, because we started Grub with us in Chicago. We had moved there, and we didn't know anyone there. And it's so hard to make friends after college. Like, please make all your friends now. Some of my lifelong friends are still from Berkeley, so it's hard, right? And so we started this thing to just like meet new people, make new friends in Chicago. And we tried talking to all the VCs we could when we were still in Chicago. The product was live already, and we couldn't get any traction, zero traction, right? The minute we did YC and we did demo day and all that stuff, like it was like the floodgates opened and everyone wanted to invest. People were begging us to invest. Don't ever do this, but like when you raise a seed round, you had a valuation cap. We were so hot as a company that we raised our valuation cap 4 different times during that seed. Do you remember there's like a series A1, A2, A3, whatever it was?
I totally remember that. Yeah.
And the last round, because an investor wanted to get in so badly, he was like, I'll give you a term sheet uncapped, just I want to give you money, right? It was like that crazy after YC. So again, it was a forcing function, plus you just got your brand out there.
Yeah, and yes, that was the environment back then. It was the environment a few years ago. So it will come back. I know we're in a tougher fundraising environment now, but as the conventional wisdom goes, it's a great time to start a company and be an early stage company. What are some? So you at Goat, you raised your seed, your A, B, C. How much in total have you raised to date from Goat?
On the primary side, about $500 million.
$500 million, and that's from seed investors, venture investors, growth investors, strategic investors,
Institutional investors. Tell us a little bit about how you view each of those different types, and not each of them, but how they are different in a way, and how you approach them differently. I think, every round is so different. The early stage, it's a lot about you, right? I remember my check from SV Angel, for example. I was telling him my story, just my background, all that stuff. And so after school, after a couple of years, I worked in investment banking at Lehman Brothers. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was an investment bank. Huge, quick side note. So I was a computer science major, right? I took probably one EE class all of Berkeley, and back then they were like, "Oh, you're a tech guy. Okay, why don't you cover semiconductors?" And I had no clue about semiconductors, but I was in tech, so they put me in semiconductors. That's probably why they don't exist anymore. But anyway, so I was working at Lehman Brothers. My parents, immigrated to the U.S. They couldn't get traditional jobs. They worked small businesses, whatever. And so I was at Lehman Brothers. I just wasn't passionate about working for someone else. I just couldn't do anything but think about working on something on the side. So my co-founder and I, we quit cold turkey from our well-paying corporate jobs and decided to create our own business. And I was talking to the investor at SV Angel, and I was telling him the story, and he was like, how upset were your parents when you quit? And I was like, oh, my dad was so pissed, because obviously he worked really hard to get me to where we are, right? Like, and all that stuff. And I was just like, he was pissed. He couldn't understand why I would leave like a great job to go like create a business like he was trying to do, right? And right after I said that, he said, okay, I'll invest, right? Because it's in the early stage, it's all about your heart and your character and your passion and like why you're doing this, right? If you're doing a startup for just like the money, like that's not like a good reason, because it's so tough, right? So that's why they invest in the early stage. I would say the Series A at Goat was one of the hardest rounds we ever did, because I mentioned how we pivoted and lost a bunch of investor money. Like, no one believed we could like create Goat to be what it was, even though we already started having some traction back in 2016 when I was raising money. Everyone passed on us, every single person. I went up and down the valley.
Was it a little bit like you were pitching to these 30 and 40-year-old venture capitalists, and they were thinking, what do you mean, sneakers? Is that a really a venture-sized business that I can invest in?
Yeah, I mean, even the Series C, there was the first thing an investor did when we hopped on the Zoom was, is this a thing? Do people really buy sneakers over retail price? And I'm just like, dude, we've been pretty successful so far, and you're still asking me these questions, right? So instantly, you don't raise money from those guys, right? But like the Series A, yes, it was a much smaller TAM than it is now, but like I think the most successful companies are the ones who expand TAM, right? It's not like, hey, there's a big TAM, I'm gonna go after it. It's like, where is TAM going? So for us, it was so hard to pitch because of that, but also because we had failed so many times over and people didn't believe in us. Like Andreessen Horowitz, for example, they invested in our seed round. They passed on us multiple rounds after that because they were just like, kind of in our company for the past 10 years or whatever. So that was really hard, even though we had some traction. The person who invested was Josh Hanna, who's a Cal alum, so go Bears, but Matrix Partners. But he invested in our Series A. We kept growing. I mean, it was bananas during our growth during 2016. And our Series B was the easiest round I've ever done in my life. Like, this is not expected, but for the Series B, wasn't even trying to raise yet, like half raising, right? I live in LA, so I flew up to the Valley, went to one firm, and I never met them before, but they were like already like preparing term sheet. And then I went to Excel, who passed on us in the Series A. And the minute I got there, I mean, Ryan's a big sneaker guy, right? And so I got there to the office, and he literally, I kid you not, blank piece of paper, he was like, I'm sorry I messed up on the Series A. How much do you want to raise? What valuation do you want? And just promise me if I say yes to it that you'll sign with me today. So I literally wrote down $25 million, $100 million valuation. And he was like, this is good? I'm like, yeah, it's good. And we're like, all right, let's do it. And it was like the easiest fundraise I've ever done in my life. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we were growing like crazy. As your company gets more mature, it's all about the numbers at that point. Like, they don't care who I am, who anyone is. It's about how are your CACs, how are your year-over-year growth metrics. Let me look at cohort data, user data. Like, it's just a full colonoscopy, because it's literally like, these are institutional investors. They do this for a living, right? They value companies and stocks all the time. And so when you're at these like pre-IPO rounds, it's just about the numbers. And like now, I barely even participate in the fundraises. Our CFO does, because like I said, like they don't really, I just go in for like the soft, like, I don't know, just like the qualitative stuff. And then like the next 5 meetings are with the CFO, because like it's just about the numbers.
Yeah, and it's an interesting observation how that continuum of vision, momentum, who the founders are, dominates sort of the earlier rounds, which makes sense. And then as you develop more traction and there's more evidence for investors to make a investment, to execute on their investment thesis, gets more objective, and the types of investors you begin to interface with are focused more on those numbers. You also took an investment from Foot Locker, which was an interesting partner. It's a strategic investor, as probably a lot of you know. Strategics, corporates are investing. What was that like? Was that a unique situation where there's some things that you needed to look out for in that round in interfacing with them?
Yeah, I mean, Foot Locker, less people shop there now, but I mean, they have 3,000 stores in 27 countries, and they were and are the kind of the biggest footwear retailer in the world. So when they are looking to invest, there are just so many partnership opportunities, right? That can exist. So you have to listen. I would say in terms of being an investor in our company, since they don't do this for a living, it's actually a lot more painful to like get to the right place with them, because they have commercial interests as well as financial interests when they invest in a company. So it's not like a VC where they, again, do this for a living. They have a playbook. As a corporate investor, there's kind of like a lot of different rules. We didn't negotiate just valuation, but there's like data sharing and partnership agreements and like kind of what the scope of work we're going to do in the partnership. And like, talk to me if you ever want to take money from a strategic, but like that commercial agreement, like 95% of it, we negotiated that so hard, but 95% of it doesn't get done, right? So it's just like such a useless point of time, or a use of time. But yeah, I mean, because I think strategics have a day job, they're not just financiers. They're pretty low lift. I think for the most part, it's fine. It's money plus potentially a partnership.
Yeah, and they're usually following a financial investor to set valuation. But you make a very good point, Eddie, in that their interests are generally different than financial investors, and sometimes you may not understand what their long-term strategic goals are. Foot Locker obviously is sort of a legacy business, right? You guys are the future. It's clear from our standpoint that they wanted to associate with you because you were you represented the future. And in negotiating a lot of the commercial aspects of the financing, we had to be very, very careful about not limiting GOAT's opportunities going forward.
For sure.
So this is the classic question. I want to also encourage people, if they have any questions. I'm going to okay, yes?
What advice would you give to companies whose like values and vision are more geared towards like the younger generation, like Go, who like to VCs that are made of like a bunch of old people, they might not be convinced? Like, what investment advice would you give to these folks?
I think every VC has their specialty. The good thing about old VCs is they have kids that are young enough now, and I think a lot of our board members even and VCs, they'll talk to their kids about what's going on, because they don't know, right? I'm even aging out of what you guys like these days, but
are you an old guy?
I know, but it's find the right VC. They'll do their homework. They need to understand the new generation. A lot of VCs are actually not that old, I found out, because it's getting to be a young person's game, and so I do see a lot of VCs kind of understanding things more, but you have to fight in the right one.
Yeah, and it's totally agree, and also it's less about the fund and more about the individual partner, which is key. And I think you should talk about this, is that, partner invests in your company. It's like a marriage. They're going to be on your board, and you're going to need to get along with them, and hopefully they respect the fact that it's your company. They're there to provide advice and support you to be successful. If you God forbid you get somebody who doesn't resonate, that can be very disrupting.
Sam knows, but I've had my share of good and bad investors. Let's say that. So it's so important to get the right partner, someone who is going to have your back during the good and the bad and respect your vision, because he knows I've had VCs that don't share those. And it's really, really hard to get rid of VCs on your board. It can be done. We've done it. But so again, talk to me if you ever are in that situation. But I hope that none of you have that. Before you take money from a VC, make sure you talk to the people they've given money to, because hopefully they'll tell you kind of the real dirt on if they're a good or a bad board member.
Yeah, and go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, very interested in the shoe industry. We do like 3D printing with like 70,000 printers around the world, and I keep getting requests like 3D printing shoes. No supply chains, on demand. Is that something that's really something that's happening now, or do you see in the future? Just what's your opinion from coming from the industry?
Nice New Balances, by the way. But technology is always going to infuse in products. I think to the extent they can make 3D printed shoes comfortable, and they have a good designer on. Nike's done a bunch. A couple other companies have started to do it. So, why not?
In the back.
Hi, my name's Kush. I think I talked to Sam a couple weeks ago, but I own a small company, and it's in a niche market, and actually I sell ants and ant farms online. And I'm currently struggling to scale the business past the six-figure mark. So I was just wondering, how do you grow in a market when your TAM is smaller? Do you move to adjacent markets, or do you move to do you force your market TAM to grow in a sense by trying to do other things?
Are you the leader in the ant farm market today?
I would say yes.
Can you differentiate at all?
By differentiate, what do you mean?
Well, so real quickly, when I started Goat, we did 3 things differently than the traditional marketplaces that still hold today, that are still very important to the company. One, of course, we authenticated everything that we sold, so it's not just a peer-to-peer network, it goes to us first for us to authenticate. Number 2, we built a brand around the marketplace, so it's not just a transactional marketplace that you see online. You can see that with Goat. We really have put a brand around it, and that's allowed us to get so many partnerships. We partnered, like Balenciaga sells regularly on us, Versace, Alexander McQueen, all those companies. And so, we did a couple things. And number 3, we SKUified the database. If you look on eBay, for example, it's a very unstructured database, but we SKUified the database. So if you're looking for a New Balance 550 gray, it'll just, all the sellers compete against each other on one SKU, so that you're not looking at hundreds of listings, right? So we did those 3 things differently than the traditional marketplace. So I'm not sure if that exists in your industry, but can you differentiate yourselves so that you can become the leader in the ant farm business? Is there some way of reducing friction, or some delivery method that's better, or whatever, that you can create? So, yeah.
Yes. So let me repeat. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question in the early days when you pivoted and were having trouble getting funding for your new idea, which was the Goat, which would eventually become Goat Group, how did you manage that?
And you were saying why was it a good idea to pursue, right? So for me, I think, one, you never know for sure, right? There's an element of luck and timing in all companies. But what we saw was that, one, the world was getting more casual. I mean, if you went to a conference like this 10 years ago, we would be wearing black and brown shoes on stage. Guaranteed.
I'd have a blazer on.
Yes, guaranteed, right?
Very nice tie.
But now, when you go out, when you go to a club, you go to a date, whatever, you can rock sneakers, right? And so we started to see that the world was becoming more casual. And number 2, we started to see that the younger generation was becoming more fashion forward. When I was going to high school, I could wear the same pair of shoes every day of the week and no one would care, right? But now, the younger generation, I mean, you guys are all, it's mixing and matching stuff, right? So it's not even again, like when I was younger, you would go to Nordstrom and just buy this season's clothes to wear for the next year, right? But like now, people like to mix and match. They like to mix and match high and low, new and used, luxury, affordable, all in one outfit, vintage, whatever, right? And so that's what I think Goat Group provides, where we like to say our mission is curating the best products from the past, present, and future, because that's how the generation shops these days. But that was our thesis. Like kids are getting more fashionable, and the world is getting more casual. And yeah.
Well, it's great that you recognize that trend. That's very, very similar to what Airbnb did in their market. And they recognize sort of this larger trend to room sharing and home sharing, and they leverage that. Riding that wave, in addition to executing great as you've done, provides a huge boost for your company. The fact that you're riding a sort of bigger societal wave. Yes.
Okay, I think we're almost out of time, but in terms of brand building, that's the question, like why did we decide to brand build? And it's one, like, again, I have a co-founder, one co-founder. I'm like I was the computer science guy, right? The business computer science guy. Like I'm all the back end stuff. My co-founder, he's like the designer. He's the reason why the site looks the way it is, why it's so cool. So I give him all the credit for wanting to build a brand, not myself. Obviously, you know Daijin.
Yeah.
So, and he just really had a point of view that marketplaces are just so stodgy and transactional and lacking soul. Whereas, again, this generation cares about where they shop and like how they want to shop at a place that makes them look and feel their greatest, right? So he was just like, let's build a brand so that we're not just a marketplace, but we can become a retailer as well. And we've seen that come to fruition, right? Because now we have a bunch of sellers on our platform, but also the brands sell on us as well. So we have the best of both worlds. We have the first party product and the third party product only because we've built a branded creative experience. We'll take Balenciaga, for example. They would never sell products directly on eBay, right? It would be dilutive to their brand. Everyone would be like, why is Balenciaga selling on eBay? But they want to partner with us because we elevate their brand. We educate like the new generation about what it is, what luxury is, and they see Goat as a gateway for the younger audience to transition as they become older to luxury products. And so we see a lot of the luxury fashion houses want to partner with us.
Great, thank you.
I don't
I
know.
think, do we have any more
One
time?
more. Okay.
I'm sorry, yes, one more.
Hi, my name is Naz. I recently graduated in computer science, just like last month. And I'm at the point where I'm looking for a job, but like you, my heart really isn't in working 9 to 5. And I've been doing mobile game development for a while. I was able to develop a game that got over 500,000 downloads on the Google Play Store. But now I'm kind of at the point where I don't know what to do next. Do I seek funding? Do I make another game? What's your advice on that?
Ooh, yeah. So, I don't know if you know our story, but my co-founder and I, we started our kind of startup journey when the iPhone just came out. Coming from banking, I was a huge BlackBerry user because it was a physical keyboard. And he had to really convince me that the iPhone was like the next thing. And we would have typing contests at home because I was not convinced that he could type faster than me on a virtual keyboard. But here we are today. So we created apps and games. We actually busted out one a week, and we made a very meager living on it. But we learned how to build apps quickly, efficiently, better and better. So I would say kudos to you for getting to 500,000 users. I think it's a start, and wherever it takes you, it's a building block, in my opinion. The problem with games are they're hit based, right? So there's no guarantee of success for the next one. Same with our apps. Like we built some really good ones, some ones that flopped. But I think just keep grinding. If this is your passion, I don't know if we talked about this, but like I just was never a good employee. Like I just couldn't like care. I couldn't care less about working for someone or doing something else. Or so for me, it was like building a company was like the only path for me because I just didn't want to work for someone. So it was creating a company, but then just constantly iterating the business, and then that's why we chanced upon Grub with us because we were just constantly trying to find new ideas. So I would just say if that's your passion, just keep grinding, keep working, and then I think you'll stumble upon something as long as you're resilient.
Yeah, and is there ways to, low effort, low cost ways to continue to validate this? I mean, for instance, if you've got 500,000 downloads, are you monetizing this at all? Is there a way to monetize? Is it subscription? Can you do a series of games? So I would try and turn over as many cards as you can for as cheap as you can. And once you sort of develop those data points, I think you've got a fundable company there.
It was at the peak of its hype about a couple of years ago, and at that point, I've only monetized the strategy that had the few ads, and it only
Yep.
made about 20K through ads, and so that money I just used for about 3 months.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to figure out, like, if I don't have money to like actually start the company, then how do should I rethink the success right through that, or like should I keep spending somehow apply it to I have?
I think it's gonna be hard to get funding in this market with past success, to be honest. Like I said, just find what you're passionate about, and whether it's building the next game or not, but like just you got to grind. It's
Thank you guys.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you for coming today. I find myself in sort of a similar position. I currently run a retail SaaS company. I want to ask you, how did you find sort of the courage to pivot after you received all that funding, post like seed around it, and like how did your employees react to that decision?
well, I would say we threw everything we had at Grub with us. We tried everything, and yeah, people always ask like, how do you know when it's time to pivot? Like we tried everything. Like I talked about all those friction points, and so we were just like, okay, like people don't know when it's time to go to a meal or if there's vegan options for them. So we created like something called Grub Tonight, which was an app which was prefix same day dinners, whatever, and people still didn't show up, right? So we were just like, it's time to quit. Plus, we didn't even want to go to our own meals anymore. We were just like, God, it's such a chore to go to these meals. And so for us, it was just like, we knew it was time. Like there was no ounce of us that wanted to continue. And so it's like, let's just pivot. So I don't know, like once you're not passionate about a project, like life is so short, just like it's time to change.
Thank you. I've been told that that's our last question. I want to thank Decode and certainly Eddy for his time and wisdom. And thanks for having us.
Thanks everyone, go Bears.